Today's episode of SBJ I Factor is sponsored by Pepsi. Today on SBJ I Factor, Paul Archey, Chief Commercial Officer of JMI Sports. Well, I want to give a welcome to Paul Archey, Chief Commercial Officer of JMI Sports, who is joining the SBJ I Factor today from his home in Kentucky. You know, Paul, I went back to the archives and found your 40 under 40 write-up from 2002. You were
it was 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Let's go almost 19 years ago. You were 38 at that time. You were Senior Vice President of International Business at Major League Baseball. Just to put it in perspective, other members of that class, Bill Daly from the NHL, Jonathan Kraft, Mark Lazarus, and George Pine. So in with some pretty solid company there, young man. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Egg.
I want to start with your interesting career because, of course, growing up in Kentucky, sports wasn't where you started. You started at GE, but then had a career change and went into the sports business. But let's start from the beginning. Growing up, how did that influence your career and your decision-making?
So understand, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky in a town of 1,000 people, very small town. Sports were a big part of that community. A town of 1,000, but my high school gym seated 5,000. So gives you an idea of how important sports were. So Friday night basketball, it was a county school, but very important. I played sports all of my life. Growing up from it was just a huge part of what I did. Basketball, baseball player in high school, and then went on to. It's really why I went on to college at Georgetown College in Kentucky, just to continue playing baseball. But it was such an important part of my growing up, and I think where I learned the lessons of competition and even back to leadership. But I was always playing. It was just a passion of mine, and it was important.
I got to ask, what positions in basketball and baseball?
So, and I think that's kind of, I was a point guard in basketball. You've met me, Abe. I wasn't going to be playing down low. So I was a point guard in basketball, a shortstop, middle infielder in baseball. As I look back, that probably, helped shape some of who I became as a leader. I was also class president of my class. I put in roles that, being a point guard and a shortstop, where you had to lead and you had to figure out on the sports teams from those positions how to lead. And I was, as we were, I was thinking about doing this. I had a coach in high school. He was my freshman basketball coach and then also my varsity baseball coach. But he was probably the first guy that maybe saw some leadership qualities and said, even as a freshman basketball player and also in varsity basketball or baseball, saying, hey, this is your team, and to empower me to in those positions. Of course, I was like any other, knucklehead, 16, 17-year-old. I wasn't really sure what that meant, but I think those positions, kind of put you in those roles. My career plan, there was no thought about sports. There was the career path in sports other than coaching, I think, and which I didn't really have a lot of interest in. So I was going to go into business. I majored in finance and marketing at a liberal arts school and had planned on going to get my MBA. And but really business with I thought. And you go back and you mentioned, we were talking before about working at GE, and that was really kind of the career path. Find a big, solid company, work in that company for 40 years or whatever, and build my career that way. I was there for 3 years, and there was a moment that kind of a mentor, I guess, that I worked with at GE. In his 60s, asked me one day to go help him, if I could help him move furniture out of his apartment. And I was there had been there, shy of 3 years. And I remember doing that. And I thought, and I was young, I was only 23, 24. And I was thinking about that, like, this guy's had a really good life, built himself a nice life. I'm moving furniture out. There's got to be more. I'm a young guy. I was like, I want a little more, to see a little more of the world, to get out of Cincinnati. And I just remember thinking through that process of not really knowing at that point what I wanted to do. But that was a moment where I thought, I don't want to be there 40 years.
And how did you come across UMass and know that they had a sports management program?
Fortuitously, back then there were very few sport management programs. Right. Ohio University and UMass had two of the most reputable. I didn't know about either one of them, but I was thinking about, I wanted to get back to sports in some way. And I happened to be on an airplane on a business trip, sitting beside someone, I don't know their name. We just struck up a conversation, and I knew of OU at the time. Did not know of UMass. We struck up a conversation, and they mentioned to me that the University of Massachusetts had a good sports management program. So they put that thought in my head. I went back, investigated it, applied, and ended up going there.
Did your father think you were crazy?
So there are probably 2 times in my life that I had to call my father, and he took a pause. One was when I was called him and said, I'm leaving GE, which was, I think for him, who did not go to college, your son is working with a very, reputable, strong company, and felt very secure by that, to tell him that I was leaving GE and going back to, going to University of Massachusetts, and to study sports management. Yeah, there was a long pause on the telephone. The other was probably when I called him from Connecticut and told him I was leaving baseball and coming back to Lexington. But yeah, it was my parents were incredibly supportive parents, growing up, and they never told me there was anything I couldn't do. So he was never going to talk me out of it, but he certainly wanted to understand why I was doing it.
Like parents do. I want to talk about leaving UMass. I think it was probably the late 1980s into 1990, roughly. You left that program. You had some classmates who are still in the business today. One was a previous SBJ I-Factor interview in Jeff Price. But did you know what you wanted to do when you left UMass?
When I was going through the program, I was thinking about college. I was thinking about, athletic director, going that route. And I had a professor there, Harold Vanderswag, who, I was fortunate enough to actually win. He's deceased now, but they have an award named after him. I was fortunate enough to actually win that. I'm very proud of it. It's actually hanging on my wall here. But who took a big interest in me and called me, one day and asked me to come by and see him, and said there was an opportunity with the Expos that Dan Duquette, he had a relationship with Dan, but he said, if you want to take it, they need you now, and you have to drop out of the program. And I decided, first time I thought about baseball and professional baseball, and it was working with one of their minor league teams in Jamestown, New York. And I said, well, I'm not going to leave school, so that's not really of interest. So I didn't, but then they called me and I did an internship with them. And that's how I developed a summer relationship with Dan Duquette, Dave Dombrowski, and Bill Stoneman. They were all with the Expos at that time. So during this period, I learned about an executive development program that the commissioner's office had. And I applied for the executive development program, which was the application process was an amazing experience in itself. They had interviews across the country, 6 different sites. I was selected to apply in the New England. And so I interviewed in Boston, was selected out of Boston to go to New York City. So they invited 6 of us into New York City for an interview. And, I met with, this is a time when Bart Giamatti is commissioner, and right before he passed. And so we went through an interview process on a Thursday night cocktail party kind of reception, meeting people there, interview the next day, and ended up going through that process, 6 people from around the country. And I walked out of my interview on Friday thinking I nailed that. Called my girlfriend, who's now my wife, who was living in New York. She went to Columbia grad school, and said, basically make room. I think I'm coming to New York. And then the next day I got the call. I didn't get the job. So I didn't get the job. Someone else did. So I end up going back to trying to figure out what I was going to do next, what my next move was. I'm back in Greenup, Kentucky, with my parents, and the phone rings, and it was Bill Murray from the commissioner's office, who used to be the head of baseball operations, saying that they have enough work and they'd like to take on 2 people. Would I still be interested in coming? And I was like, didn't take me long to say yes.
So you were the second. You came in kind of second in that
So I
interview
came in,
process.
so they ended up for 2 people, and that's how I started my career.
Well, fascinating that you worked with such great baseball minds of Duquette, Dombrowski, and Stoneman, and now you go to baseball's office. And Paul, were you always in international relations and international business? Because really, that was the bulk of your career there.
It was no. So when I started with the executive development program, well, first of all, the day I showed up at the office, Bart Giamatti died.
Jeez.
Just a week or so before I started. And really, when the office was really, in a little bit of just still in mourning and somewhat disarray. So I show up, and no one is prepared for me. And I'm looking for papers. Say, no, Bill Murray, called me. I have the offer letter, so it was actually the first thing I ever worked on at baseball was the Bart Giamatti Memorial service. Gave me a project. I spent most of my time with Bill Murray in baseball ops. And then I did a stint with Steve McKelvey, Steve from now at UMass. And he was, basically running the MLB marketing department. Back then, all of baseball, if you look at it now, and their wonderful offices on 5th Avenue, Major League Baseball was all on one floor at 50 Park, everybody at that time. And Steve was kind of a one-man band, had maybe 1 or 2 people in his department. So I went over and worked with Steve and for a little bit in the marketing department. And at that time, and these are one of the big breaks in my life. The international, the leagues were starting to look at international as viable markets, the international markets as being viable for them. And Major League Baseball formed a partnership. They didn't even take it in-house at the time and formed Major League Baseball International. They had to form a partnership with NBC Television and Pasco Nally to see if there was an international business. And they formed this partnership called Major League Baseball International Partners. It lasted about 3 years, but they offered me a job. And I remember going to Bill Murray and asking him, said, look, they've offered me this job. Should I join it? And he said, I don't really know if that international thing is going to work out, going to do much. So, you might want to think about it. You always have a job here. But he wasn't very bullish on it, but I did it anyway. And that's how I started with international, and immediately went to, so I hired on with them. And the first thing I did was they sent me to Australia, and I lived in Australia for 2 years, opened an office there, worked with their commissioner, George Anderson, who's still a good friend today. And as they started their league.
by my account, you also established offices in Tokyo, Beijing, Sydney, and London. And you started at International, I think roughly 1990. You stayed for 15 years, 2015. So it was a great run there. You mentioned mentors or influential people in your life. Who, name some and why?
When I get to baseball, there are three people that I would point to, and that one would be Paul Beeston. Was a really influential mentor in my life. Again, still talk to Paul today. He was another one that showed that he cared. He knew everyone by name. He was great at making you feel like that you were part of something bigger, part of his vision, everyone pulling on the same oar. He was just terrific at that. He was a bigger than life personality, as you know, but he really, managed in a way that made you feel important to the organization and to the broader vision and goal. Tim Brosnan, who I worked for as I said, most all of my career there, not quite all, but most of it. Still, again, talk to Tim, but he's a competitor. He showed he could laser focus like no one I've been around, and but learned. He was smart, but he was also street smart, and and competitive. Going into didn't matter what kind of negotiation we were going into, how big or small. You knew he wanted to win and compete, and I think that was why I love to compete as well. And I think that's why we got along. And then the third would be, Rob, or Commissioner Manfred now, who I spent a lot of time with while I was there, because many of the things that we did on the international front was a joint venture with the union. So the World Baseball Classic was a partnership with the union. I had to work with them, regularly. And so spent a lot of time with Rob. But, I think when I look at what I learned from him or took from him was ultra prepared, always. He can read a room and a situation as well as anyone, super smart, maybe the smartest person I've been around in sports. But I always felt better when Rob was in the room with me. It always felt comfortable because you knew he could find a path and find a way to a deal, or it just, and always prepared. So
did you see him becoming next commissioner? Did you see him commissioner in waiting?
Absolutely, I did.
Yeah. Well, okay, good.
As it got closer, I definitely did. And 5 years before that, or 6 years, wasn't sure, but as it started to get closer, I did. And that's one of, I really, when I left baseball, because Rob had really given me a great deal of support and guidance while I was there, and spent a lot of time with him, and still talk to him. But I hated the timing of my transition, only because I would have liked to have been around during more of his tenure as commissioner.
How would you define your management style, and how has it changed?
I think my management style, probably describe it as a player's coach. I like to put my team in a position to succeed, give them the support they need, the vision that they need, but empower them to do their job. And empowering, I use the word a lot with my team, if I want them to have equity in their position. And that means to own it, make that position, be the best version of you in that position. And don't try to, be someone else, but really own it. And with that, you've got to be accountable for the results. And I don't like to micromanage. I like to empower them to make decisions and run their business, but own it and then be accountable.
I love the theme of, equity in someone's role. A couple of quick things as we end up here, but, I remember when you left baseball and went back to went to the University of Kentucky, and now you're at JMI, I was like, wow, that surprised me. It almost seemed like a risk that I was surprised you take. But then once you look the story and read about your background and growing up in Kentucky and going home, it all made sense. Did you see it as a risk?
Well, I did. It was a huge risk, but when I was even making the decision, I felt it was a risk. I thought I would retire at Major League Baseball at that point, but I was ready for a new challenge. I'd always been intrigued by the college space and what was going on, and I saw disruption coming in that space, which we're starting to even see continuing today. But I was really what gave me the confidence to really make that jump. And over the years, I'd had several of maybe opportunities or companies that you'd talk to, but I really bought into the vision of what JMI Sports was about. Eric Judson and Tom Stoltz. Tom, by the way, also comes from that same town of 1,000 people that I grew up.
Oh, really? Wow.
Tom and I, we like to say that our town of 1,000 punches way above its weight in the college and MR business. But I really bought into the culture of the company, the vision, and what we were trying to accomplish. And at that time, if you remember, when I did take that job, the only property that we had was the University of Kentucky. Correct. And that was how we were starting. And it was a huge risk leaving. I felt I had one of the greatest jobs in sports at baseball. The things I got to do, the World Baseball Classic and growing that international business. But it was at the right time to take on. I was ready for a new challenge, and their culture and vision fit what I was looking for, and haven't looked back. It's been been now going into 6 years, which is hard to believe, but the space continues to evolve, and couldn't be really happier to take on that new challenge and with the group of people that we're doing it with.
Yeah, and with Tom, you're going to continue to grow, because knowing Tom, he is ambitious as well. So as we finish up, say you're meeting with young grads, which I know you do all the time, Paul. Say they're coming out of the University of Massachusetts program, and they ask Paul Archey, how should I get in the sports business? Or what's the best way to get in the sports business? Your advice would be?
And it does happen a lot. And I generally tell them two things. One is, you've got to know, a job's not going to fall. No one's calling you, right? So you've got to get out and meet people, do your research, build relationships, all the things that the blocking and tackling that you should know, right? Those are things you have to do. But there's many paths to that job in sports, much more so than when I was looking. There's so many ways, through agencies, through the properties, through internships, just so many ways. Don't be too, don't be choosy. Don't be too, don't think any is too small for you. But whatever you take, really learn from it. But then secondly, to me, and this is the same advice I give my kids. I have 3 kids now that are, in the professional world, and none of them in necessarily in sports like I am, although my oldest son is with a little bit with Nielsen. But the most important thing to me is make sure when you are starting your career that you're working for someone or a group that you think you can learn from. It is, don't look at the salary, because the money, the difference in the money you're going to make at any of those jobs, it's inconsequential. look at the situation, look at the people that are, running the company or running your department, who you will report to. And is it someone that you really think you can learn from in the business, that's going to be a mentor to you, is going to spend some time helping you, or that you can just learn from by being around them?
An attribute you really want to see from someone you're interviewing with for a potential hire?
Energy. I want someone who's going to bring positive energy into my group, not suck it out. Right? I mean, it's you assume that they're going to come in with the necessary credentials of an education and skill set, but I want someone who's going to bring positive energy, make the group better. I look at them and say, is that someone I want to spend, every day with in the office? Paul Beeston, I go back to him. He was great at that. In fact, he taught me a lesson on doing business deals using that same philosophy when we were negotiating. I remember a few TV deals in different markets. The first question he would ask me is, well, who do you want to be a partner with for the next 5 years? Which one? Because the money's not all that different, but if you want to be with this person, they're going to be a better partner for the next 5 years, even though it's a little less money. That's where we should go.
The biggest mistake a candidate makes when they're being interviewed is
being unprepared. I mean, by far is the biggest mistake. That's an easy one, right? That's but it's surprising how many people come in to an interview and they start with, and they ask me, so tell me about what you do, your company. And that's a real, that's going to put you on the wrong foot. You're going to have to recover from that one. I mean, you should do your homework. It's easy today, right? If you're really interested in working in the business, there's so many, read the Sports Business Journal, read the Sports Business Daily, and, before you come in there, understand the trends and things that are going on in the business. I get so many people, and particularly in this space in the college, who don't understand. They come in, they think they want to work for an agency in college, but they don't really understand, the MMR business.
Well, great career story. Paul Archey, a 40 under 40 recipient in 2002, at that time at Major League Baseball, now, of course, at JMI Sports in Kentucky. Good to see you. Thanks for being with us on SBJ I Factor, Paul, and we'll see you down the road, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks, Abe.
Thanks for joining SBJ I Factor today. Remember to subscribe to SBJ I Factor wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to our future episodes that will hit every 2 weeks.